Hello and welcome to the Nonlinear Animation with Trax. We're going to be looking at a number of feature sets within the Trax system, including building character sets for Trax, creating clips, creating poses, merging clips, splitting clips, blending clips, just lots and lots of different techniques to create nonlinear animation. That way the animation that you have created is non-destructive. You can make changes to it, tweak it. We're also going to teach you how to use motion capture files within the Trax system, how to do remapping, how to do character retargeting using the new retargeting system. We're also going to show you how to redirect animation, how to use animation with poses, so you can do your facial animation and pose-to-pose animation very, very quickly. So there's a lot that we're going to cover. I want to thank Sunder Iyer for his great research and development on this training kit. I hope you find the information very useful within your own production pipeline. If you have any questions while you're going through this training kit, we have a dedicated help system where you can create a ticket and ask any of the questions for this kit that you have. If you have any questions that are outside of this training kit and you just want to have a little bit of guidance on how to use nonlinear animation within your own production, please use our online forums where there's lots of experts that are just waiting in the background to answer your questions and give you some advice. Well, with no other delay, let's get started with our first lesson. In this first part of the quick start, how to use Trax, I'm going to show you how to do a little bit of scene setup. That way, when you're working with Trax, the process is very simple and easy and predictable. All right, I've got lesson 01 quick start loaded up. If you're using an older version of Maya and you can't open the file, then this is also set out as an OBJ file. That way you can import this object right in. And it has no animation on it. As I scrub the timeline, you see there's nothing connected to it. What we want to do is get our scene ready for this to be used inside of the Trax editor. So the first thing I'm going to do on this soccer ball is set up a little bit of animation. All right, so I'll set up my first key here on these translate X, Y, and Z. I'll just right click and choose key selected. Okay. You can also use the shortcut Shift W. Okay, I'll move this over to 12 and I'll key selected. Why did I do that? Well, I want the first frame and the last frame to be the same value. All right, that way if I want to loop it, it's easy to loop. All right, now midway, okay, about frame 6, I'm going to move this up in the air. And we'll just make it an even 10. There we go. And we'll go ahead and key selected. And there we go. So now that we have a little bit of animation, we can rewind and let's play this back. And I had auto key turned on. I don't want to have that turned on. We'll just remove that. There we go. Now it's playing back really fast. That's not really real time. So let's open up our preferences and let's verify under the timeline that real time is established. All right, let's save that, rewind. There we go. That's much better. All right, now let's go ahead and talk about the Trax editor. That's the editor that we're going to be working with to do nonlinear animation, and I'll explain a lot of this as we go. We can open up the Trax editor a number of different ways. We can go up here to Window, Animation Editors, Track Editor. Okay, and there's our Trax. All right, I'll close that. If you want, we'll go ahead and establish a preset. So I'll just click on this little preset here, and down below I'll make this perspective, and up here we'll go to Panel, down to Trax Editor, and we can make this the Trax. Now what's useful about this, let me just shade this, is that we can look at our timeline. It's very easy to move and manipulate things. We can see our animation, and if we like this setup, then all we need to do is go over here to this setup right here, right click, say Save Current Layout. I'll call this Trax and Perspective. Save it, and then I can select, instead of this button right here, I can right click and choose Trax Perspective. Okay, so that way when I click this button, I can go from Perspective to Trax and Perspective. So just a little bit of housekeeping there. If you prefer the sideways setup, you can also set it up this way. If your animation is more vertical, so I'll go ahead and set one of those up. Okay, I'll go ahead and switch this over to Tracks Editor, like this. Unfortunately, you're going to have to see a very small clip, so I won't necessarily save this, but that's how you would do a side-by-side if you prefer. All right, so I'll be doing that quite a bit, moving to this view as we're working. All right, next let's talk about creating our first clip. Now, up here in your Tracks Editor, you're gonna get clips and poses dropped into this timeline. Think of this as like a video editor or an audio editor. You're gonna have multiple tracks, and here's your timeline. Well, where are these clips going to be stored? Because they're actual nodes. Well, let's find a place. We're going to go up here to File, Project, Edit Current. Now, in your current project settings, I recommend giving the clips directory a name. Okay, I'm going to call it clips. That way, when I hit accept, anytime I export, save a file, however I pull this data out, it's going to store it directly into a folder that is going to be predictable somewhat. So if that was, let's say, on a server and I wanted to share my animation, it would be really, really easy to do. Okay, so now that we have this animation done on this ball, how do I turn this into a clip that I can use as a nonlinear animation? Easy. All you have to do is go to Create, Clip, and we're going to go to Option Box. Okay. At this point, let's reset the settings. And let's talk about a couple of these. I'm going to get into much deeper explanation as we go. Right here, keys, leave keys in timeline. What happens by default, if I reset this by default, when I hit Create Clip, it removes these keyframes out of the timeline. It puts the ball back to where it was initially, and it stores all of the animation inside of a clip that we can work with. So it's very important that if you want to keep the animation for, let's say, a variation of that animation, then you want to leave these keys in the timeline. Okay. Second option is, do you want to put the clip in the visor or in the Tracks Editor and the visor? Okay, I'm going to choose put the clip in the Tracks Editor and visor. And what that does is it goes ahead, yanks the animation out of my main timeline, and dumps it into my tracks area, and I can work with it there. Now, this is very important because let's say you had a 1,000 frame animation, but you only want 50 of those frames to be turned into a clip. You would put selected and then hold Shift, click and drag a certain portion of the timeline that you want turned into a clip. Okay. Let's say I have 1,000 frames, or in this instance I have 48 frames. Right now I only have 24 frames that I'm viewing. I can say time slider, and that would set the initial clip to be from 1 to 24. If I say start and end, I can actually tell it I only want the clip to go from 0 to 12 or 24 or whatever it is. I'm going to choose Animation Curve. And what's unique about Animation Curve is that it looks at the first keyframe and it looks at the last keyframe and it turns a clip out of into that from that information. Okay. At this point, we don't have sub-characters, so we're not going to worry about that. And I don't like to create time warps automatically. I like to have full control over when I create a time warp. So we'll talk about that here in a little bit. We are going to go ahead and include hierarchy by default. That way, if you have the root selected, it'll grab all the joints underneath the root and turn it into a clip. All right, now that we've talked about this till we're blue in the face, let's create the clip. Hit that button, and then you'll notice right up here, you should have soccer ball loaded up. Now, if you don't have it loaded up, let me deselect. And let me just clear this so we don't see it. Looks like it's going to be hard to clear this because it's already loaded. You may have the ball not show up here. Okay, if you don't, you can choose Load Selected Characters, and then this will pop in. Or you can have what I had and just turn on Auto Load Selected Characters. So that way, if you have a different object selected, it deselects. If you have this object selected, it selects it. So makes it very easy and simple to work with. All right, I'm going to maximize this view. Okay, and I'm going to move in. Now you zoom in and out just like you do in your regular Maya views. Okay, first two mouse buttons, hold them, click and drag, and you zoom in and out. Middle click and Alt middle click and drag, and you pan. So it's very similar. If you want to frame it, hit F, and it will scale the clip to fit your screen. Okay. Down here you have a timeline. So as I click and drag, you notice the main time marker moves. Okay, if I click and drag down here, you notice the time marker here moves. So very easy to edit and move things. If it's selected, it will be yellow. Okay, and if I had a whole bunch of animation, you would see which portion I have selected because this part would go highlighted. Okay, it'll tell you which one's selected. Now this gray bar, that's called a track. And you can have as many tracks as you need for your animation. You can divide this up as many ways as you need to see fit. All right, let's talk about our clip here. Now, there's 4 sets of numbers that we want to talk about. The first number up here, these two, tells us the actual keyframe data started from 1 frame to 12 frames. Okay, that's essentially all that tells us. The middle number tells us how many frames of animation we have. So in this clip, we have 11 frames of animation. Underneath it, it says clip 1. That's the actual name of the clip. And if you look in your channel box, here it is right here, clip 1. If you go to your attribute editor and select it, there is clip 1 here. So here's attributes that we're going to be tweaking. Okay, so you can get it from the channel box, some attributes, a bunch of attributes from the attribute editor, or right here in the tracks editor. Now, I don't like the word clip 1 because it's hard to know what in the world clip 1 is. So let's double click that word and we'll type in up underscore down. Okay, up down is this animation. Okay, and if we scrub it, you can see it goes up and down. The bottom numbers are very unique because these numbers tell you what frame this animation is starting. Well, why are both these numbers the same? Well, let's move this. Okay, right now our animation from 1 to 12, it goes up to 6 and down to 12, and then nothing. Well, let's say the animation actually needs to start on frame 12. Well, all we have to do is put our mouse inside of this track or clip and click and drag it over to 12. Now look what happened. The top 2 numbers stayed the same because our original animation started from 1 to 12 frames. However, the bottom numbers say when does the time start. Okay, so in this whole time scheme, where does it start and where does it end? So now our animation goes from 12 to 23. So if I play this back, now nothing happens from 1 to 12. And once we hit 12, it does the animation and goes back to 23. Okay. So what we're going to do in the next lesson is talk about how to trim clips, scale clips, add more to this animation, and keep working with this same little starting project. I will go ahead and save this file as lesson 2. That way you can open it up at the beginning or at the end of lesson 1 and at the beginning of lesson 2. And we'll do that with all the rest of the files. We're going to continue our quick start lesson and spend a little time talking about trimming clips, scaling clips, and then adding animation to our existing track. All right, I'm going to continue with the same file here, and what I want to do is address some of these numbers here. So let's take this back to 1 and 12, and what we have up here is a trim function. So if I put my mouse over these numbers, you notice my icon changes from 4 arrows to 2 arrows and a line. That's very similar to an icon that you would see in a video editor. Okay, and what we're going to do is trim the clip. Now let's play this back. We see at frame 1 we're on the ground, frame 6 we're in the air, frame 12 we're back down. Okay, let's say I don't want my animation to go up and down. I just want it to go up and down. Okay, I don't want it to do the whole up and down business. I just want it to start at 6 and go to 12. Well, traditionally you would take those keyframes, delete them, see what it looks like. If you don't like it, undo it. Well, with the tracks editor, it's completely nonlinear and it's completely non-destructive. What I mean by that is I can put my mouse up here, click and drag, and you notice I'm going to click and drag to 6. Okay, let me pull in here a little bit so you can see. Now look what happens. I'm on frame 1. 1 through 6, nothing happens. Once I hit 6, the ball comes down, and we're done with the animation. Okay, so I can trim that front part off, or I can trim the back part off. Okay, let's say in this situation, the ball goes up in the air and it doesn't come back down. Okay, very, very handy. Now you can do a number of different things with these two little icons here. So let's say I take it to frame 6 and I hit this icon. It'll do the same thing. It'll trim the front of the clip off. Okay. If I choose this button here, it will trim the back of the clip off. Okay. Now remember, you cannot pull this any further than the 11 frame animation that we have. So 1 to 12 is all it's going to display. You can move this wherever you want, but it's only going to display 1 to 12 as far as the animation goes. So what do the bottom numbers do? Well, the bottom numbers allow you to adjust the scale. Okay. If you're adjusting the speed or the scale, you are in turn adjusting the speed. So right now we have this thing set to 100%. We have a 1 to 12 and a 1 to 12. Perfect. What if we want this ball to go slower? We want it to start at 1, go up in the air by 12, and back down by 24. Well, we need to stretch this to 200%. And we can do this a couple of different ways. You could put your mouse right in this little number here, click and drag over to 24, and now when I rewind and play this back, you see how it by 12 is when it goes up, and then it comes back down to 24. Okay. If you go the other way with it, you're going to see that it happens much faster. It goes up and back down by 6. And then nothing. Okay. So we can adjust the back end or the front end, whichever is easier, whichever your situation has. And then you can also put in 100% as the scale. Now let's say I want to take this to 2%, but we're in the attribute editor. You have to be really, really careful because in this scale, it's not in a percentage. Okay, so if I put in 2, it's actually 200%. It's not. I don't put in 200 here, otherwise I'll get a 20,000% increase, and we don't want to do that. All right, so a couple of different ways to do that. Now, once we've got this stuff put in like this, let's layer some animation. What I like to do when I'm layering animation is turn off this track. The easiest way to turn off this track is to hit this third button. So if I hit that button, okay, look what happens. My animation is frozen. Okay, so I'll turn it back on, go back to keyframe 1, and then I'll turn it off. Now, it's frozen down at the origin. So wherever you turn it off, okay, turn off the track, is what pose or position the object is going to be. All right, so now let's set a couple of keyframes here. Let me get my translate tool, and I'll set a keyframe, Shift W. Okay, and you see I got a little red mark here, and I'll go to frame 12, and I'm just going to move it forward like that. Shift W. So here's my animation. All right, take a guess at what will happen once I activate this track. Once I do that, it's going to layer the animation. Okay, and you see what happens? This is 200%, so let's take this down to 100%. And there we go. Well, let's say I want it to go forward, then go up in the air, then come back down. Well, I don't want it to go in the air yet. I want to wait till, let's say, frame 6. Well, all we have to do is turn this into a clip. So we just take our object, create clip, and you notice it automatically makes a brand new clip. This is called clip 1. I'm going to rename that to forward. There we go. And let's play this back. There we go. Looks nice. Well, let's shift the up and down over to 6, and now look what happens. We slide, then we go up in the air. Both of these, if we shift select them both, we can move them both, scale them out, pick them up. Let's just select them both. You see if I can pick them up in the center, I can move them both at the same time. If I hit the arrow, I can scale them. So now we'll see how this plays much slower. Okay, I'll take that back to 24. There we go. Okay, and we can squeeze them both in so they move faster. Again, very nonlinear, very non-destructive. Okay, I'll go ahead and take these both back to 12, so it's 100%. Now, you notice accidentally we got this extra track. It's no problem. Once you deselect, reselect, the extra tracks will be gone. If they're empty, they'll be gone. All right. In the next lesson, we're going to talk about copying, pasting different clips, scaling our clips so we have a loop. All right. And we'll talk about absolute and relative clips. Just like everything in Maya, these clips are just simple nodes. That means you can copy and paste them or duplicate them to make many more of them. I'll show you the hard way first of duplicating a clip or scaling out the clip so you have kind of a looping animation. All right, right now what we have is from 1 to 12, the ball goes up in the air, moves forward, and then nothing. So let's say we want it to move another 24, all the way to 24. We want it to keep going forward. Well, an easy thing that we can do is take our forward clip, go to Edit, and we can choose Copy and Paste, or Duplicate, whichever you prefer. Okay, I'll just choose Duplicate. Notice it drops it in up here. Okay, it may have dropped it in like this, so there's a couple of different ways how it could come in. Okay, it doesn't matter. Just put it right next to the other forward clip, and let's play this back. So it goes up in the air, and then it moves forward. Now, why did it move forward? Because really where we keyed it was at the origin. Well, it moved forward because this is what's called a relative clip. Okay, and if I open up my attribute editor and go down here to my channel offsets, you will notice that the X, Y, and Z are set to relative. Now watch what happens if I choose all absolute. Okay, I set everything over to absolute. Now watch what happens as I play this animation back. I start over here at the origin at frame 1. I go over to 12, and then the second the next clip starts, I go back to the original animation. So here's what my original clip was. Okay, just this. And what I've told the system is go up in the air and then jump back to play this back. Well, you may want that at times. Let's say we want a ball to bounce up and down in one spot over and over and over. You want that set to absolute. If it's not, it will bounce up and down, but it will keep going higher and higher and higher if it's relative. Okay, because it's going to keep adding. So now that we're happy with this movement, let's change it back to relative. And here's a shortcut. You can right-click and choose Relative Clip. Okay, and we're back to where we're at. And instead of doing the whole copy and paste thing, okay, I'll teach you another shortcut, which is looping. And all you need to do is press Shift as you put your mouse near this bottom corner, and you'll get this a line with a curved arrow. If you click and drag, you will see that it makes a loop of this existing clip. So here's what we have now. It goes up in the air, lands at 12, and goes back up in the air to 24. So really, we can get rid of this clip and just make a loop of this bottom one. Okay. Now, at any time, you can scale this. Okay, so scaling is still independent. You can trim. Trimming is still independent. Looping is just how many times do you want this clip, whatever it's set to play over and over and over. So right now we've got it set to 2. There we go. And it just makes for a very easy process of instead of having lots and lots of clips duplicated over and over and over again. Now you could take this, okay, I'm going to select them both, and we can go up here to Edit, Group. Okay, and now you can see it made us a small subcategory here called the soccer ball group. All right, and what's great is I can pick these guys up, move them, move them over, but they're stored away as one group. Okay, they're not in the main area, so when I create a new clip, I can keep adding to this animation. So what happens, let me ungroup that. I just wanted to show you where that was. Let me just ungroup it. So what happens if you add another up and down movement? Okay, so we have this, but we want to add one more up and down. It's no problem. All we have to do is, let's set everything back to frame 1. There we go. Let's open up our visor. Now you can get to the visor a number of different ways. You can go up here to Window, General Editors, Visor. Okay. You also have a little shortcut button right here, third button. So we'll just hit that, and it will load up our visor. It usually takes a second because it's looking for other files, so no big worries. We'll come over here to our character clips, and you notice we'll have 2 clips in our visor, the up and down and the forward movement. Okay. So let me just scale this window in a little bit. And I'm just going to take my up and down, middle click, and drag and drop that in like that. And let's see what we end up with. Perfect. We go to a side view here, and you can see that we have an additive effect. So I have two up and downs. So it goes way up in the air. Okay, look where it's right here. And then it lands, and then it goes up not as high, and it lands. So you could use that as a kind of a, let's do it 3 times. Let's increase our timeline here. Let's scale or loop this another notch. There we go. And you'll get these little indicators up here which are telling you where the clip ends. Okay, so I'll just pull that back a little bit. And I'll duplicate this, Control D. Set it back here. And Control D one more time. Okay. And let's clean all this up a little bit. So here's what we've got. I've got 3 of them stacked, 2 of them stacked, and then 1. And here's what we end up with. We get a huge bounce, a high bounce, and a low bounce. And we did that just by keyframing this with 3 keyframes in the beginning, and then 2 more, so 5 keyframes, and we've got all this animation from it. And what's great is I can just store those away and use them whenever I want. So we're going to get into a lot of other stuff in this lesson. We're going to talk about character sets, time warping. There's just a lot of projects that we're going to do. I want to just give you a quick overview of how to work within the Tracks editor, how to disable any of the animation. Okay, just like that. Now we just got forward movement. Let's say we want to view just this bouncing movement. We can hit this button. Now we only see the bounce. Okay, very, very useful set of icons here. These are locks, so that way we can't accidentally move those. So you'll find that as we work through this, I'll explain a lot more of the menu options. I'll explain a lot more in the attribute editor. Just want to get you up to speed very quickly of making clips, dumping them into your visor, grabbing them, using the tracks. I recommend you make different animations, maybe some with rotation, and you can play with those, adding those in and grouping them so they can get tucked away so you can keep adding to your animation. In the first 3 Quick Start lessons, we didn't talk about character sets because when you create a clip, if you don't have a character set, the system will automatically make one for you. Now let's actually go in and systematically create a character set and then extract the animation as a clip. All right, this is lesson 4, Tracks and Character Sets. And let's play this back. This is from our character setup kit, the rigging, and we also have a walk cycle kit coming out in the near future, so you might want to check that out. And we'll play this back. There we go. We've got just a real clean walk cycle. Okay. So let's turn her into a tracks animation. Let's yank out all of the animation that we have here, all these little keys, and let's turn her into a character set. Well, if we look right here where it says no character set, right here is where you would choose a character set. Now, a character set is essentially a collection of attributes that are keyed at the same time. This makes animating a character much easier than trying to individually set keys for all these little pieces. All right, if you look over here, we do not have a character set on this file. You'll see a little stick figure icon once we make it. All right, I need to select all the curves, so I'm going to go up here to Show None, and then Show NURBS Curves. Okay, there's all my curves. If I play this back, you'll see those are the curves that are moving. Right, I'll go ahead and select all of them. Perfect. And let's go up here to Character, Create Character Set. And I'm going to go to Option Box. So we bring that up. And I'm going to reset everything. So I'm going to call this Female. And I don't recommend you choose the hierarchy below selected node because it may accidentally grab a bone or one of the constraint nodes. So we don't want to do that. What we want to include is we could choose all keyable, but if you do that, you're going to get your scale, your visibility, any of the other attributes that are in the channel box. You may not want to have, these pieces over here as part of the keyable attributes. It's just extra stuff that you don't need to think about. Now, from channel box is kind of unique because if I just highlight this, that's all that will be in the character set. So that's kind of unique. I prefer to go with all keyable except rotate and translates, these two, and any of the dynamic pieces. So that means all of the rotates, all of the translates will be yanked out, put into a character set. The reason I'm not including scale is because I don't have any stretchy bones or any stretchy type system, and I don't really care about visibility. Right? So we'll just say create character set. Now when I do that, I'm going to get a little stick figure icon over here and the female, the name of it. If I open it up, you'll notice all of the curves are in there. All of their attributes are in there. Okay, all of the translates and rotates, they're all stored nice and neat. Now, later on when we get into doing bone-driven animation, I'll yank out some of this stuff. Like, the left elbow, let's see. Left elbow, FK control. I'm not using the rotate X or Z. I'm only using the rotate Y. Okay, so throughout this whole animation, those two numbers will never change. No need keeping them around, so you can delete those right out. I'm not going to do that now. I'm going to keep this very simple and light. Just want to keep the whole thing moving quickly. So I'm not going to mess with that now. All right, we'll go ahead and say show all. There we go. And let's get our tracks editor open. Now, how do I know that our character is selected? Right here, it now says female. Okay, so if I can open this and I can choose other characters that if I had here. Okay, so there's female. Okay, if I want to turn it off, I can say no character set. Okay, so I'd have to select it in the outliner or the hypershade or hypergraph. All right, let me set this back to female. All right, let's go ahead and we have this animation here. Let's open up our tracks editor, and I can hit that button that I made earlier. Another way of getting the tracks editor open is to type it into your script editor here. You can type in capital C, character, capital A, animation, and capital E, editor. And so that's another name for the tracks editor, the character animation editor. There it is, and I can just choose list auto load selected characters. There we go. We don't have any animation, so we can make that here in a second. I'll just choose create clip. Okay, option box, we'll just go ahead and reset, and I'll just call this walk. Okay, create clip. Perfect. Now you'll see that the animation is no longer in our timeline. It's been yanked out and placed in the tracks itself. So let's go ahead and go to our little split level that we have here. And I'm going to give myself 100 frames. And let's just scale this out. Remember, hold shift, click and drag out to 100 frames. And now she'll just loop over and over and over. And that's how you can very easily create a great looking walk cycle very fast with very little work. Okay, the whole system is very, very robust. All right, what I'm going to do next is how we can add animation to our existing walk cycle. So we'll be adding a little bit of non-destructive animation to this setup. In this lesson, we're going to take a look at adding a little bit of animation back onto our walk sequence that we have. She's just walking along. What we want to do is add a head turn, so she turns her head, and we will then merge all that back into one clip. All right, you can open up scene 5 nondestructive.ma, or you can continue on with the previous lesson. All right, we got this little walk going here, and I'm just going to go in and let's set some keyframes for her head to turn and take a look somewhere. Okay, so I'll just go over to frame 30 and press Shift E. Okay, I'm going to set a keyframe for my rotation. Okay, and I'll go to about frame 50 and press Shift E again. Okay, so I just want to lock that in. Around frame 42-ish, somewhere around there, 43, I'm going to just rotate her head. Okay, so she looks up or over. Okay, Shift E. So let's play this back. She's going to be walking along. She looks over and looks back. All right. As you can see here, we have it. It's layered on. It's non-destructive. The walk was not hurt. Okay, let's go ahead and take this and turn it into a clip. So we'll go up here to create clip. All right, use the same settings as our previous settings. So we'll just change this to head turn. There we go. And let's scrub back a little bit. Now we have the same thing that we can do with this clip. We can wait a little longer in our time before she turns her head. Okay, but what I'd like to do is when she turns her head, there's a frame where she starts to come back. So right here, I want to split this clip. And that's easy to do. We just go to Edit, Split. And you notice that it makes two clips. Okay, let me just move this up and out of the way. Oops. No need to resize it here. Okay, I'll go ahead and pull this one up. And watch what happens. She comes over, she looks up, she snaps and looks back. All right, so how are we going to fix that? What we want to do is leave her head up in this position and have her come back to look at us. All right, let's take a look at this. What we're going to do is create a blend from here to here. Okay, so we split the clip to add some space. Now we're going to create a blend. So we'll go up here to Create, Blend. We'll open up the option box just to show you. You can set different eases, so we'll just choose linear. And you have different types of rotational blend systems. We'll choose the shortest. Okay, we'll choose Create Blend. So now let's scrub our timeline. She holds it, then she looks back. Now what's great is this blend can last as long as we want. So let's say we want her to look back the other way at the end of our walk here. Okay, I'll rewind this and play. She's going to look up. Now she's going to look back. Okay, let's say we want this to be shorter. No problem. All we have to do is bring that in a little tighter. She's going to look up and look back. Okay, that's called a blend. It's going to take the last pose or the last keyframe setup and then blend it to the next set of keyframes. All right, I'm totally happy with this. Okay, this is really good. I like this animation. I like its position. Let's say I want to move it a little bit further down. I want this to last a little bit further like that. Okay, I'm happy with this. Let's say I want to make this into one clip now. I can select it. I can choose Edit, Merge. And now what it's done is it's made one clip out of that animation. Let me play this back. She's going to look up and look back. Great. Let's rename this Head Turn Up. Now, what's great is in my visor, let me bring up my visor, and let me pull over to the other end here. I have my walk, I have my head turn, and now I have this merged clip, which is called this Head Turn Up. So it's very nice. I have access to all of my clips very quickly in this visor setup area, this little folder setup. So very easy to grab this, and if I want another head turn, I can just middle click it, drag and drop it in, and you see here she turned her head again. So she comes in, puts her head down, and then looks back up. All right, I can go ahead and delete that. One last thing I want to show you is the fact that when we say it's non-destructive, we really mean that. It does not destroy your animation. So here we have a merged clip where she turns her head, holds it, and then turns back. Well, let's say we want to turn her head back a little bit quicker. Like, what's going on? She wants to snap her head back. Well, let's take a look at the graph. All we have to do is hit this button. It will then load up the graph editor. Okay, I'll hit F to frame everything. And it adds a keyframe at every single frame, right, which is also easy to fix. We can just select this keyframe, and we can choose, let's see, curves, simplify curve. There we go. Maybe a little more, we want a little bit more data in there. Let's go back here to curve, simplify curve. Let's choose classic, apply. Yeah, it cleaned up a little. No, it didn't really. Let's go back. Curves, simplify curve. All right, we'll choose dense data, but we'll let's set our value tolerance a little bit lower. So we'll say 0.05. Okay. Well, we still need to pull that down, I guess, and kind of straighten that out a little bit. Okay. But you can simplify your keyframes like that and make tweaks to those at any time. So over here, if we wanted to kind of pull that a little tight, maybe delete that keyframe. Okay, we have that freedom. And boom, she snaps her head back. Okay, so at any time you can click that button right there, open up the graph editor, hit F to frame your curves, and you can tweak out any curves you want. We can open up our walk cycle, graph it, hit F. Obviously we're going to have tons of curves in this situation. Okay. Why did it add all those keyframes on this? Well, it was a merged clip, so it merged every keyframe together with between the two clips in the blend. But you can see the power of this is very, very cool because we can keep adding to this animation. If we wanted to have her hand raise up or her legs go up in the air a little bit higher or a knee dip, easy. Just animate it, turn it into a clip, place it where you want it, split it, blend it, merge it, do whatever you'd like to do. We can actually even take two tracks like this and create, I'll go to Edit, Merge, and create a merge out of this. Now this is a walk, head turn. And that's one clip that we've got, walking, head turn, come back, and we can even scale this down now. So if we wanted it to be twice as fast, we've got walk, head turn. So we have a lot of control by the whole merging process, scaling, looping. We can actually loop this now. So let's say we can scale this down, loop this. So now she'll be walking a little bit faster, look up, and then look up again. Okay. So hopefully this lesson shows you just a quick overview. Let me undo this. Quick overview of how you can layer animation. The next lesson, I'm going to show you how to do some more effects, things like clip exchange and how to bring in clips, output clips, and get those clips to work within your characters. In this lesson, we're going to take a look at clip exchange. So taking the animation from one file and dumping it into another file. Now, it's very important that currently we take a look at similar character sets. So we're going to have one character set for one file and another character set, which is going to be very similar. In this instance, it's going to be the same character set. I'll show you later on how to retarget the animation to a different character, but for now, let's keep things simple. All right, now this lesson is divided into two files. So this file is 06 Clip Exchange Part A. And again, it's our little walk cycle of our female that we have we've been working with. All right, I'm going to set all objects to none on my mask and turn on my curve here. So that way I can just select the curves. Got them all selected. I'm going to go to Character, Create Character Set, Option, okay, Female, that's good. Create the character set. There it is. Let me open up my tracks. I'll go ahead and go to List, Auto Load Selected Characters. Okay, there's my female. And then we'll go ahead and create a clip. So create clip. There's my walk. Let me rewind this and play this. Perfect. All right, so what I'd like to do is go ahead and take this clip and export it out. All you have to do is select the clip, go to File, Export Clip. When you do that, remember that clip directory that we made in Lesson 1? That's where it's going to want to dump it. So this will be walk, cycle, female, and then I like to put the frame count, so it's a 24-frame walk cycle. All right, we'll export that out. Now we're good to go. Now let me open up the next file. Okay, this is the 06 Clip Exchange Part B. Okay, so in this instance, let me go ahead and turn on my NURBS curves. You see it's the same rig. Okay, and you see it's kind of a thinking animation. All right, so what I'd like to do is go ahead and turn off all objects, activate the curve, and with my same settings, I'm going to create a character. Perfect. It named it exactly the same. It's got all the same attributes. And I'd like to go ahead and turn this into a clip. So we'll go ahead and auto load selected characters, create clip. Okay, and I'm going to rename this thinking. All right, so again, I've got my thinking animation. I can rip that off. So there's nothing. Okay, let me give myself about 100 frames. Nothing, and then she goes into this thinking animation. Okay, perfect. So what if we want to add our walk cycle to this? So no problem. All we have to do is go to File, Import Clip to Characters. Okay, and we'll choose Option Box. We want to make sure that we go ahead and put it in the tracks editor. So we'll just say Import Clip. There is our walk cycle female 24. We'll go ahead and import this, and we're done. So what we've got now, let me pull this back, is this thinking animation. Let me select this mesh, might be a little bit easier. A little bit easier to see what's happening. Okay. And then she goes into a walk. So we can loop this, or cycle it. Okay, see how she's acting kind of weird? That's because she's set to relative. There's no need for some of this stuff to be relative. Okay, so let's go ahead and take this clip. Now, if you right-click and relative is not here, that means some are turned on to relative and some are absolute. So we'll just choose Edit Clip Channel Offsets, and we'll say All Absolute. There we go. And depending on how many attributes you have here, it may take a little bit to load up. So don't. It's not crashed. It's just taking a little time to load up. All right, let's take a look at what we have here. And then she goes into her walk. Now she's not blending from one to the other, and that's okay. All right. So we'll talk about that next. In the next lesson, my goal is to take our walk cycle and mix that. See how she's all messed up right here? Look at where her hands are, because it's trying to do an additive, right? What I'd like to do is take her hands and take her upper body and mix it with the walking of the lower body, and that'll be kind of a nice little experiment. So we'll try to do that in the next lesson. Combine two clips, two halves of each clip. Now let's layer that animation that we just did and work on isolating the upper body from the lower body. Alright, so now we've got our animation combined. We've got our thinking and our walking, and we want to combine the two so she's thinking and walking at the same time. Let's take a look at our tracks here, and you see what we've got. Okay, I'm going to combine both of these on one layer here, and I'm going to go ahead and remove this scale here. We're at 100% on everything, so we're kind of back to default here. So we have the thinking and we have the walking. Okay. So the way we're going to do that is to create what's called a sub-character set. Okay, I'll just go forward where she's walking, so it makes it a little bit easier to select. Let's take Shift Select each of these elements, okay, the 3 FK controls, the shoulder control, and we're going to start again at the wrist. This little guy, this one, this one, this one, and then we'll also take the chest control. Okay, we should probably also take the back control. All right, so we've got all these pieces selected. Let me open up my outliner. I'm going to control-click the female character set, and I'm going to go up here to Character, Create Sub-Character Set. All right, I'm going to leave everything as is because we want the scale and visibility out of it, but we'll call this the arms, chest, female. All right, we'll go ahead and create this. And now over here in our character set, you'll see that there's an arms, chest female, and a female. Okay. And if I open up my outliner here, you will also notice down at the very bottom another little group inside of here, which is the sub-character. All right, let's go ahead and open up our tracks editor. You'll notice that when you refresh the tracks editor, okay, we'll just close this and open this again, you'll notice that the arms, chest, female is loaded in. So what does that mean? Well, we have actually now got the lower body think and the upper body think extracted. Okay, so let me show you what I mean by that. See how her arms are swinging? Watch, I can take this and move it off, and now she's not thinking, she's holding still, but right here her arms are swinging. So what's cool about this is we can mix and match this. Now, here's something that I found. If you delete this part of the clip, you can't bring it back. You can only bring it back by dropping in the original clip, which, that's just an extra step. So what I like to do is if I'm not for sure if I want to get rid of this or not, I move it down into its own track, okay, kind of off the timeline, and I just mute it. Okay, and I'm going to do the same thing with this little thinking up here. I'll just take this and move it down like this and mute it. And all I can do now is I have the lower body right here, this walk. Okay, I'll set that to 1. And let's go ahead and I'll just loop this a couple times. And here's my upper body thinking. I'll loop that a couple times. All right, and let's see what this animation looks like when you combine this together. All right, I'll go ahead and turn off my curves. It's a little bit easier to see. And there she's walking and thinking. Of course, she's not going to 100 frames, so let me just stop this real quick. And we'll just loop this out past 100. Here we go. And we'll just play this back. And you can see by taking and creating sub-characters, you can take a base animation and mix them together into different characters or different animations, final set animations. We're going to take a look at constraint clips next. These are different types of animation clips, and what happens is it will take all of the constraint information, bake it out into keyframes, and then you can tweak it and work with it. So I have lesson 8 constraint clip opened up here, and it's a real simple setup here. We've got just an eye controller that we can move around here, and you see the eyes move. And I have this animated little fly that's going to be moving around the scene. So let's scrub our timeline here, and you see that the fly is buzzing around. Okay. Well, what I'd like to do is have the eyes look at the fly. So we'll select the fly, shift select the face control here, and we'll go into our animation module, constraint, point. And that will snap the face control over to where the eye is looking. Okay, so let's rewind and scrub. All right, perfect. Well, this kind of an animation looks good, but there's a problem. It's assuming that the eyes are moving in the position of the fly, knowing where the fly is going. Really, the eyes should be just 1 or 2 frames behind the fly, so it's kind of like it's tracing its movement. It's not doesn't really know where it's going. It's following it, and we're not getting that animation right now. Right now, we're getting a dead on. We know exactly where the fly is going, and we don't want that. So let's go ahead, take the face control. Now, if you want, you can make this into its own character set, but remember, when we create a clip, it'll automatically make a correct character set for us. All right, we'll go into our layout here. I'm just going to go up here to Create, Constraint Clip. Let me show you a couple things in the option box. Really, all of these are essentially the same, except the time range. You'll notice that curve is not in here because this won't have an animation curve. It's either the selected time range or a set amount. So we'll just say Create Clip. We'll take our default settings. And what's happened now is this animation of this control curve that's constraint to this fly has now been baked out into similar to keyframe data. Okay, what I mean by that is I'm on frame 1, okay, and by frame 20 my eyes are already down here in the bottom corner. Okay, now that's where the fly is. Now watch what happens. Okay, I can slide this clip over to frame 20, and now for the first 20 frames, nothing is going to happen. Okay, I'm going to hit frame 20, and now that animation takes place. So when I actually hit 40, that's where the fly was 20 frames ago. Okay, so I have right here a 20 frame offset. This is a really creative way of controlling your constraints. Instead of keying them on and off, you can actually use that data and then just offset it a little bit. So let's go back to frame 1. Okay, I'll set this to maybe 3 to start on frame 3, and you'll notice I'll have a much more realistic movement. the eyes are now tracking where that bug is going. All right, very good. All right, so that's one object. What if you have another object? Let me turn on this layer here, this fly to layer, and you see I have a purple little bug, and let's play this back. Okay, so I've got this little continued animation going on here. And what I'd like to do is constrain the same type of setup, the fly to the head control, or the head control to the fly to. We'll point constrain it. It'll snap over. So now when I click and play, you notice the constraint has overridden this keyframe information or this clip information. All right, no problem. Let's just create a clip out of that. So we'll just take this, create constraint clip. Okay, and I'll just set it off 3 frames just like before. Now look what happens. It looks like it's not looking at anything. Well, it is, but what's happening is it's adding both of these together. And we don't want that. Okay? So let's trim some of these off. Now let's find an interesting place. I'm looking at these bugs here. Let's try to find an interesting point where they kind of cross. So about here looks pretty good. We'll say frame 45. Okay, I'll select that little head control. And I'm going to teach you 3 different ways to trim this top clip. Okay, I can select this clip. I know I want to get rid of this part right here from 45 on, so I can hit the scissors here. It's the second pair, which is trim after time, just like that. All right, let me undo. You could also right-click, go down to trim after. That'll trim it off. Okay, and I'll show you on this clip how you can trim in the attribute editor. You would just open up the attribute editor, go here to the source start. All right, and we're going to set this to, I believe, 45. Let's try that. And the only problem with that is that it shifts the timeline, but that's okay. All right, now let's play this back. So we got this bug moving. Okay, let me pull this up to it's a little bit easier to see. Okay, so you'll be able to keep an eye on both these here. Okay, it's got one bug that it's watching. And here we go with the crossover. And now it's following this bug. The only problem is it's in front of the bug. We want it behind the bug, so let's just shift that over a few frames. Okay, maybe a few more. There we go. So it comes over, and maybe that's way too many frames. There we go. Okay. Why does it have this offset? Why does it look this way? If you ever have this problem, it's more than likely this is a relative clip because it's adding its movement on. So let's right click. Sure enough, it's relative. Let's turn that off. There we go. So let's start it over. We got fly 1, the circle. It comes in, moves. It gets ready to transfer over to the other fly. There we go. And you notice it's got a little bit of a snap right there. So that's no problem. What we can do is select the 2 clips and we'll hit blend. And I showed you earlier, you can go to create blend. Okay. You can also hit the second button, which will create a little blend effect. And let's take a look now. We hit play. Let me actually scrub through. It's a little bit easier to see when I scrub. Okay, we're on the circle. And it's going to blend over to this bug, and we follow it. All right, very, very cool. So that's how you can create yourself a constraint clip. Remember, it's not really animating a constraint on and off. It's actually baking out, similarly baking out the constraint information into a clip and then running the clip through the playhead. Very nice technique. Remember, at any time you can take these 2, merge them down, export it out, and you've got your baked animation that you can use on other face controls or other types of animation. Similar to a constraint clip, we can create expression clips. Now what this allows us to do is to take an expression that we've added to an attribute and control that in the timeline. So it's similar to baking out the constraint. We can bake out the expression, so to speak. All right, I have lesson 9 expressionclips.ma opened up, and this is a character from one of our Backwater Bunch production series kits, and it's just a rough animation of him moving. There's no randomness to it. There is a little bit of an up movement here where he comes in and he burps right there, but that's about it. So how do we add some random movement to this and also have control over its speed and tempo? First of all, let's go ahead and grab this master control here, and up here under Translate Y, let's right-click and go down to Expressions. Now, an easy way, instead of having to type all of this information out, is we can just copy that, come down here and paste this. Okay, and what we're saying is master Bubba dot translate Y, okay, is equal to, and we'll just do a simple thing here. We'll just say random 0, 1, parentheses, semicolon. All right, now watch what happens when I hit create. I'm going to get an error. All right, this says that attribute is already being controlled by an expression, keyframe, or other connection. Well, that's what this is. That's up and down movement when he burps is this expression, or is this keyframe information. You can see these 3 keys right here. So how are we going to deal with that? Well, the easiest thing we can do is to just select the master control and go ahead and first create a character set out of it. Okay, I'll just name this Bubba set. Okay, I'll go ahead and create the character set. And then in my tracks editor, I can just go in here. Let's go ahead and auto load that character set. And we'll go ahead and create clip. All right. So that takes all the animation off. Let me just zoom out here. That takes all the animation off, and our burp is right there. Okay, fair enough. So now we can add an expression. So we can right-click on that, Translate Y, go down to Expressions, and we can take this little guy, copy it, paste it down here, and let's type in our expression. The first part for the Translate Y is going to be a sine wave. These are all going to be sine wave functions, by the way, but we want it to go up and down, up and down. So we'll say SIN, sine wave, parentheses, okay, and what do we want the sine wave of, what value? We'll say frame. What that's going to do is actually come down here and get the frame number and dump that in, okay, frame divided by 10, because we only want 1/10 of it, okay, and I'll hit create. Now I'm just going to move this window, or just minimize it. I'm not going to close it. Just minimize it for now. A couple of things happened. First of all, he shot up in the air, okay, but we do have movement. Very nice. Okay, we do have a little bit of movement. Now, how do we control things like maybe side-to-side rotation? Okay, we want to rotate back and forth and rotate in like the x-axis. No problem. Let's go back to our expression editor here that we had closed off, and let's add a little bit to our expression. Now I'm going to add a little bit to it, and then I'm going to close the window just in case you close it accidentally and how you bring your expression back. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and paste, and I'm going to remove the Translate Y part. Okay, and I'm going to add rotate capital X. Okay, we'll say rotate capital X equals SIN, the sine wave, of the frame divided by 2, okay, and all that divided by 180, semicolon. All right, now watch what happens when I hit edit. If I move this off, you'll see it's the same thing. There is no rotation. Well, how do I fix that? What we need to do in this expression editor is see where it says convert units all. We need to set that to none. Okay, and I'll hit edit. And I'll close the window, so just in case if you close it, I'll show you how to bring it back. Now when I rewind, I'm getting that nice slight rotation. You can see I'm kind of rocking, which is perfect. Okay, so if you close the window accidentally, just right-click on Translate Y, go back into Expressions. Under Filter, we'll say by expression name. And here is our expression, expression 1. There it is right here. And to add to it, you just hit enter and keep adding to it. So let me open up this space here. I'll just hit paste. Remove the Translate Y part. We'll put in rotate Z. Okay, this will be the sine of the frame divided by 3. All that divided by 180. Okay, and I'm using 3 that way it doesn't match up exactly with the rotate X. We get a little bit of variation to it. All right, we'll hit edit, no errors, close. Okay, rewind and play. So now we're getting all kinds of rotation happening. Good stuff. All right, let's go ahead and turn this into an expression clip. This is essentially going to bake out that information. So we'll go up here to create expression clip. Option box, it's pretty much the same thing as the constraint clip. We'll go ahead and name this up and down. Okay, create the clip. There it is. Now at this point, I can slow it down. So you see now this is moving really slow. Or I could pull it in and speed it up greatly. And I have a lot of control over how this is going to happen and what it's going to do. One cool thing that we need to address now that I want to show you how to do is the fact that this is up in the air. Okay, and if I mute this track, you notice it goes back exactly where it was. That's kind of like what it would look like before there was an expression on it. And that's cool. This is where we want it. Well, I'm going to now show you how to create a pose. And a pose is nothing more than a one-frame set of keyframes. So it's like a one-frame snapshot of where that character is, and that's called a pose. All right, so I'll select our main control here, our character set, and I'll choose Create, Pose, Option Box. When you create the option box, it pretty much lets you just name it. So we'll say Base Spot. Okay, we'll say Create Pose. There it is. Now, unlike when you create a clip and the clip automatically gets dumped into your tracks editor, when you create a pose, it does not come into the editor. So let's add that in. We'll just go up here to Library, Insert Pose, Base Spot. Now you can also go to the visor and middle click, drag and drop. All right, let's go ahead and mute this channel. Now if you look what happens, what we need to do is have this pose take place before the clip. Okay, that's a little trick for you. It needs to take place before the clip starts. All right, so now we've got kind of best of everything. We've got our animation taking place, we've got the little burp happening, and we have them in the right location. So if you're working with expression clips, that's an easy way to make things happen very quickly. If I had to pick and choose one particular feature set of the tracks system, I would have to say the time warp feature is incredible. That's a great way to manage tons and tons of animation curves with one simple curve. All right, I've got lesson 10 timewarp.ma opened up here, and I have a character set named female, so that's ready to go. And all I need to do is go into my tracks editor and select my female character. I'll go ahead and choose turn off auto load and say load selected characters. That way it's always available. And I'm going to create a clip. Okay. Now the clip, I'm going to rename this to cheer because this is a cheerleading sequence. So there she goes. She leans forward. Okay, and I'm actually going to turn off the NURBS curve so it's a little bit easier to see. And there's her animation. Now, let's say I want to slow down some of this animation. Well, an easy thing that I can do is just right click, choose split clip. Okay, it'll make 2 clips, and I can stretch one out and shrink one down. And essentially what's going to happen is I'm going to have a slow setup like this, and then she's going to move through her routine real fast. Okay, let me play this back, show you. Okay, you can see how slow she moves. Now I could do the opposite. I could speed her up like this and then slow this part down. So that way I end up with the same frame set here. So she gets positioned. All right, so you get the idea. Well, let me set this to 100%. It's not a great idea to bounce these around back and forth, chop them up into dozens of little bits when we can just create this with one setup, and that's with a time warp. All right. So I'll go to this cheer end here. I'll go to Create, Time Warp. And you notice a new attribute popped up. And when it did pop up, it's got a animated keyframe already set up. If I move my timeline, you'll see that that number does update. It updates with the, not the frame count, because look, I'm on frame 205, but this says 100. And if I go to frame 0, it says 1. So what gives? Well, it's a percentage of being complete. All right, so let's take a look at the graph editor. I'll hit this button here, which will graph the curves for this cheerleading sequence. I'll hit F, and you can see I have tons and tons of curves. So to re-sequence this animation at a different speed is going to take a lot of work, essentially. Well, if I scroll all the way down, you'll see an entry called Time Warp. Okay, and I'll frame this. And you'll see here I have a 0 to 100 scale, 0 to 100%, and here I have a set of frames that explains how many frames I had in that animation. So what can I do with this? Well, what's really, really interesting is the fact that we can take this information and warp it. So what we can do is take our curve here that we have selected, and let's add a keyframe. So I'll just select that tool, middle click here, and with my move tool I can get some different results. So let's say I move this point down over like this. Okay, so what I've got here is it starts off at a very low percentage of being done. So it goes almost a third of the animation with a very low percentage of being done, and then it ramps up to 100%. So let's play this back. Okay, and let me just kind of frame things up so you can see both of these editors at the same time. Okay, here it comes. See how she went fast and then slowly through the rest of the sequence. So she goes fast, which is the normal speed up here. Then she goes slow. So here's the fast, slow, and then back to a regular speed. Now we can do that in a number of different effects too. We can go the other way with it. If we were to pull this keyframe up like this, we're going to go really slow at the beginning. Okay, watch when it hits here, it's going to go really fast and then slow through the end. So really fast, slow, really fast, faster, and slow. Okay. Couple of other things. Let's say you wanted to reverse that animation. No problem. Let me just delete that keyframe. All you would need to do is set this keyframe to 100. Okay. And this keyframe to 0. And now what's going to happen is you're going to play this back in reverse. So watch, she mounts. And then with a really funky, wild animation, she goes way backwards. That's kind of weird. Let me just set this to all absolute, because that's really cool looking. There we go. All absolute. Let's play this back again. So there she goes backwards. And a lot of that could be because we have this one frame overlap. So there we go. Okay. Well, what if we wanted to start and then go back? So we can do that as well. Let's go back into our graph editor. We'll set this to 0. And I'll set another keyframe, or I'll replace that keyframe right in the middle. And we'll move that keyframe up into the 100 spot. There we go. So now let's take a look at this. So now we start off. Here we go. Ready now. And then she goes forward. Okay. Now, if you're happy with that, that's cool. I'll show you one other trick. If you were to, let me set this back to 100 here. And we'll essentially take this back to normal. If you are to adjust the slope and take it up and then back down, she will reverse her sequence. So here she gets ready. She goes forward. And then she's looping it back and then does it again. Okay? And sometimes it's a little bit easier when I show you the graph. and a scrub as we play. So she comes forward, up, and then she points her hands, but then she goes back, up, and then back again. So you can see that up, back down, and then back up. So that position gets hit once and twice, and then once on the way back. Very, very interesting. And one more thing I want to teach you is if you take this point and you go down below the curve, what we're going to do is stretch into this clip. Okay, so notice she's in the T-pose. Okay, we play. She goes back to kind of her T-pose, and then she moves through her sequence really fast. So that's really how you can control a whole bunch of keyframes. I mean, that's just that's a ton and ton of keyframes that we have. All these keyframes that we have connected, but they're all being, the speed of all of them are being controlled with this time warp, which is a really, really powerful system. If you just take a little time to get used to it, get to work with it, it'll save you so much time when it comes to reanimating your different animations or resetting the times for them by hand when you can just do a time warp. So let me just show one last little final bit here. I'll go ahead and set this up to look like this. Okay, so we're going to go into this very slow, speed through, and then slow back down. Okay, and kind of have more of an exaggerated slow down. So let's play this back and test it. There she goes, slow, normal speed. And then maybe we might want to pull that back just a little bit. Obviously, we don't want her to be slow in the air. And this line here is very deceiving. It looks like it's the timeline, but it's not. There we go. And she takes her time. Very nice. One quick observation is when you're working in the tracks, you'll see this green line. You know that that has a time warp on it, so it's visually easy to tell, do I have a time warp or not on my specific clips in my tracks editor. I'm going to teach you now how to speed up your blend shape animation that you're doing with facial expressions. And that's by doing a pose-to-pose animation within your tracks editor. Alright, this is the little head we used for the RenderMan for Maya training kit. And what I'd like to do is show you, here we have a basic setup here of eyes. Okay, pretty used to that. We also have a new facial rigging setup here that we have for the face. So he's got lots of cool stuff happening here on his face. Okay, got his chin. So a lot of cool stuff. We also have a character setup of just the face. So you can go down here and load up just that face. So with that done, let's go ahead and save a default pose. Okay, let me go ahead and load up the character. Okay, the face. And let's go ahead and go to Create Pose. And I've called that the default pose. Let me open up the visor. There we go. Default pose is what I called it by default here. And that's going to be kind of the basis of a lot of work that we're going to do. So that's kind of what I call the bind pose, the start pose. It's just the default. Nothing is moved. So now let's go ahead and make something where he's kind of surprised. Maybe he's looking up. Okay, we'll drop the jaw a little bit. All right, that looks kind of cool. And all we have to do is go to Create, Pose. You can also go up here under the character. Let me see if we can pull that up here. Animate, Create Pose. Okay, so you can do it two different ways. All right, let's go ahead and rename this default pose to Surprised. There we go. And something that we want to make sure of is in our clips here, we want to always have these guys set to, I'm just going to minimize this so I don't have to keep opening and close it. When we use them, we want to set these all to absolute, all absolute. All right, so how do we use these? Well, let me drop my timeline down here a little bit. And let's say we start off with frame 0. We want to go to the default pose. It's no problem. All we have to do is middle click, drag and drop And there is our clip. You notice his face changed automatically. Perfect. Okay. And about at frame 20, we'll go ahead and drop in the surprise. So you can just drag and drop, middle click, drag and drop. Okay. And maybe at the end of 34, maybe a little bit quicker, about 26, we go back to our default pose. Now you can middle click, drag and drop. You can also go up here to library, insert, and we'll go back to our default. Now why aren't these doing anything? Well, they are. They're just relative, so they're adding on top of themselves. So let's minimize this visor real quick. Let's go ahead and set all of these to absolute. Okay, select each one, absolute. Select this one, all absolute. And so what do we get? It hits this shape, it reacts, it hits back. Now, what can we do with this? Well, we can actually go in and blend each of these poses. So we'll select two of these poses. We'll hit this icon here, which is blend. You can also go to create blend. There it is. All right, so I'll just scrub this back, and you see it now animates to that position. We'll go ahead and create a blend between these two. Okay, and at any time you can shift this. Let me pull in a little bit tighter here. Like that, so then his reaction takes place a little bit faster. And one complaint that I have is it's very difficult, let me open up my visor, to know what these are. Well, there's a little trick. You can hit render, and we'll render that little scene. Okay, this is the default pose. Okay, let me render that. And you can go edit, grab swatch to hypershade visor. Okay, and when you do that, you can click and drag a region. Okay, and you'll see you get this little dotted line. And you can middle click and drag that onto one of your clips. So there he is. Now we'll go to the surprised point. Render that. You go to view, grab swatch to hypershade visor. Let me make a more proportional selection here. Middle click, drag and drop, and there it is. So it's a little bit easier to see your reactions. You can get that framed up to where you take the whole image and drag and drop. And at any time, if you want to see what this looks like, you can just right click on it, apply pose. Right click on it, apply pose. So you can test things out. The only thing that my complaint with this is that when you close this window and close this file and you open it back up, your poses will be there, but those little snapshots will not. So if any of you have a solution to that, I'd love to know if you're using some kind of a mail script or an option to activate that. We've never had a chance for it. We've never gotten it to work since the early days of using Maya, and so we've just kind of worked our way around it and made a little document to show what all the poses do. So that's how you can take a little bit of animation. Now when you drop an audio clip, it'll show up here as your soundtrack, and that way you can scrub this timeline back and forth and match up your facial positions or phonemes with the actual audio track. So I'm not going to be able to demonstrate that because you wouldn't be able to hear the audio, but it's as simple as dragging and dropping your audio, or right clicking here, and at the very bottom you would see something that says the sounds. You would be able to select which sound you have. Again, you just take your WAV file or AIFF, middle click or single click, drag and drop it from your Explorer window, dumps it right into the timeline. You'll actually see a little waveform, and you'll see it up in your soundtrack space. So that's how you animate with poses. All right, what do you do if you have a walk cycle that you want to apply to different characters that are the same character but maybe different sizes of characters? So maybe one has a bigger head, one has bigger hands, one has longer legs or shorter legs. How do you set that up? Well, in this lesson, I'm going to show you how to take animation that we have on our control curves from our rig, dump that onto the bones, scrap everything, and then get our animation turned into a clip. And then using poses, we will repurpose our animation for different size characters. Okay, so this is our standard file we've been working with, Lesson 12, Poses for Proportioning. It's the same walk file that we've used on a number of lessons. And right now what I have is animation that is dumped on or created by adjusting these control curves. Okay, so these little control curves are the ones that are being animated and in turn drive this walk cycle. Well, I want to convert all of this animation over to the joints. So let me go to wireframe and select, or go to show joints, and I'll select those joints. And I'll go to right click, select hierarchy. Now, I want to open up the channel box and get all of the rotates, scales, and translates moved over. Because if you look right now, I have some on my arm, but like on my legs, they're cleaned up. The shin is cleaned up. The foot's cleaned up. What I mean by that is the translate, rotate, and scales have been yanked out. Okay, so let's go ahead and right-click, select hierarchy. The trick, and Sandra Delano showed me this, is if you hold down Shift and deselect one of the joints, now when you go to channel control, this side will be blank, and you can reset them all essentially. So let's scroll down until you find rotate, XYZ, scale, XYZ, and translate, XYZ. Okay, we'll go ahead and move those over. Close. And if you will notice, when I select these, some of these will be locked. Okay, so let me select the leg. You see the leg is locked. The foot has some locked channels. So let's select that hierarchy again. Okay, and that same trick, hold down Shift and click once on the leg here, and you'll see that they show up here. We'll just highlight all these guys, all the channels, right-click and choose Unselect, or Unlock Selected. There we go. So now none of these channels are locked down. They're all open and ready to be used now. Okay, so let's bake this animation out. Let's go ahead and select the root again. Select right-click, select hierarchy. We're going to go to Edit, Keys, Bake Simulation, option box, and two options that you want to turn off are keep the unbaked keys. Go ahead and turn that off, and disable implicit control. Without that, it won't bake the the IK control. So let's bake all that out. Done. And what we need to do now is clean up our scene. So we need to open up this Don't Touch layer, which has all these IK handles, and we need to essentially just scrap all of them. So let's turn off our joints, turn off our surface, select all this. We'll hit delete. Okay, and you have to do it twice. Select everything, delete. And then over here, we can go ahead and clean up any of these groups. We don't want any of that. This root parent constraint, we want to get rid of that. Delete any of these extra groups that we used to have. And probably just even move this root joint out of the root group. So, essentially what we're doing is we're cleaning up this scene to where all we end up with is the animation, the bones, and the surface. Very clean. Now, it did take out all of these channels, so it's keyframed every channel for every frame of these joints. And that's okay, but not great. So let's again select the hierarchy, and we'll go up here to Edit, Delete by Type, Static Channels. And what that means is any channel that has no animation in it has been cleared out. So let me select some items here, and you'll see that like scale has been cleared out, translate Y has been cleared out. Nice and neat. All right, again, let's select a hierarchy, and let's turn this into a character set. So we'll just type in female joints, and this time I want to include my scale. All right, I'm going to show you how to do some stuff with that. All right, let's go ahead and create character set. There it is. Let's open up our tracks editor. Let's go ahead and load the selected characters. And you know what we're going to do next, which is create a clip. So we'll go ahead and do create clip. And let's play this back. Nice. If I shift this, we know it works. So perfect. Very nice. Okay, so what else can we do with this? What can we do that's proportioning? Well, let's first create a pose in the bind pose position. Okay, so with this joint selected, and I can just select the root, it doesn't really matter. We'll go to skin, go to bind pose. And in this pose right here, I'll go up here to animate, create pose. You can also do this from the tracks editor. All right, let's go ahead and name that. So let's let me open up my tracks editor here. We'll just open up the visor. All right, let me cruise over here to my character poses and my default pose. Perfect. Perfect name. All right, what can I do with this? Well, let's have some fun with this. Let's kind of readdress some issues of this character. Okay, I think she should have bigger hands. So we'll just select her palm on this side, her palm over here, and let's kind of get goofy with this a little bit. Maybe we could select her head joint, scale that up a little bit. Okay, we'll go and select, kind of pull in her waist a little bit so she's got a real tiny waist. And maybe we'll go ahead and move her down. Okay, and from the side view, we'll grab her legs and move them up like that. Okay, main thing is we want her to be on the ground plane. So just be aware of that, that whatever you do, she needs to be on the ground plane. All right, that's kind of funky. All right, we've got this weird looking character now. Let's go ahead and create another bind pose, or another pose. We'll just call this big head. Okay, create pose. So what we've got now is, if I hit play, I've got a walk cycle on this big-headed character and big hands. Okay, if I want to go back to my original, I can go back to my default pose, rewind, and play. Okay, so I can switch these back and forth, no problem. And it looks like I've got a little bit of offset on the, so let's open up this a little bit. And in my tracks editor, let me take a look at my clip here. Oops, there we go. We want to take a look at the root translate Y is absolute. So we did move that a little bit. Let's go ahead and take a look at our pose real quick. Just verify that. Character pose. Apply pose. So yeah, unfortunately we did. Let me just apply this again. Let me just verify. And we're going to just move her down a little bit. Okay, let's go ahead and recreate that pose. So I'll just take this one and throw it away. And, oops, let me undo that real quick. Sorry, there we go. Apply pose. We'll take this one and move it down a bit, and we're going to create a new one from here. So create pose. And now we can throw away this big head pose and use this apply pose. There we go. So you may have to finesse it a little bit, but you can see we've got a lot of really cool results from this. And you can make lots of variations and keep the same walk cycle, essentially. I mean, nothing's really changed. It's just the proportions have changed. So you can add these in. Now in the next lesson, I'm going to show you how to make a number of characters do, kind of an offset animation, different proportion characters using the same technique. Now that you've seen how to create different poses for proportioning, let's talk about how to create multiple characters from one animation and one character set. We're going to actually do a little bit more of the posing as well as some blending that I'd like to show you, and just some different tricks on how to make this happen. All right, I've got lesson 13 multiple characters.ma opened up here, and if I scrub the timeline, it's just a simple, clean animation of just this character bowing and standing up, kind of like at the end of a performance. Okay, so what I'd like to do with this is turn this into a character set. Now, I only have two things here, so just like in the previous lesson, I've ripped out all the character controls and put everything just on joints here. All right, so I'll select the root, right-click, select the hierarchy, and then create this into a character set. So I'll go to create character set, and I'll call this female underscore 01. Okay, and I do want scale active, so we'll go ahead and create character set. So there's my female 01. I'm going to also rename this root to root underscore 01, since there's going to be more of them, and this female surface to underscore 01. All right, so I have all the pieces that have to do with this female now pulled right out. Okay, I'll also go into my tracks editor here, and let's go ahead and turn this into a clip. So we'll go to create clip, and I'll say walk cycle looks good, create clip, and we'll go ahead and load, auto load selected characters. All right, perfect. So let's go ahead and make a couple of these characters. And we'll start with one just so you can kind of get an idea of how this is going to work. We'll select the geometry. We'll go to Edit, Duplicate, Option Box. We'll go ahead and reset this. And the choice that we're going to make is Duplicate Input Graph. Now, when we do this, what happens is it duplicates the character set, the joint, and the surface. So everything gets duplicated over nicely. You'll notice down here in your character selection area, it will say multiple, since we do have multiple character sets. Okay, and to move this character over, if you select the geometry, you're not going to be able to use your move tool. It will be locked down. Okay, so instead, grab the root 2, which will be its set of joints, and you can move it over. Now, the issue with doing it like this is if I hit play, it snaps right back. Now, both geometry meshes are there, sitting right on top of each other. And what's happening, I mean, it's making sense. That's where the animation was, so that's where it's going to snap to. So like we did earlier, we're going to need to create a pose and trick it into staying into this position. So I'll rewind this, put this in the position where I'd like her to be as her start, okay, and we'll create a pose. So I'll just make sure that female 2, that character is selected, okay, female 2, and we'll go to Animate, Create Pose, Option Box. I'm going to call this female 02 underscore base. So this is the base position. Create pose. All right, now when I rewind and play, still it doesn't work. Well, that's because just like our clips, let me go ahead and load all these up. There we go. And we'll just say load. There we go. So both of these are loaded up, female 2 and female 1. The reason that that didn't show up was our pose has not been entered into our tracks. All right, so let's go ahead and make sure that the female 2 is selected. I just want to show you what happens there. We'll go ahead and insert that pose, female 2 base. And you get this kind of weird, let me show you her mesh. You get this weird kind of like a crossover effect where the arms cross over. And that's because this is still a relative clip. Let me frame this in. So what's happening is this is feeding into this. All you need to do to fix this is to move your pose back one frame. And just by doing that, now our animation works very smoothly. And there's our animation. Okay. So female 2, we can go ahead and offset her a few frames. Perfect. All right, so knowing that information, what else can we do? Well, let's duplicate this again. Press Control D. Okay, we'll go ahead and select root 3, which is now our new batch. We'll move this one over, and let's make some modifications to her geometry. So I'm going to go in and grab some of her back joints here, and let's go ahead and kind of scale these up just a bit. Okay, you don't want to do a whole bunch on any one particular joint. You want to kind of spread this out a little bit. Okay, nice. And so you can see now she's much longer, and the we'll move her hips up a little bit. Her hips down. There we go. Okay, cool. So she obviously is much longer and leaner than the other, taller than the other characters. So let's now create a pose out of this female 3. Let's go ahead and select that character. Go up here to select current character set, female 3. Okay, if you can't reach the one down below. And we'll just create a pose. So we can do that in the tracks editor. You can do it all kinds of places. Let's go ahead and load the selected character. Okay, number 3. Create a pose. I'll say this is the female 03 base. Create that pose, and then we're going to dump that pose right in. Okay, again, we're going to get that kind of weird error, but all we need to do is just move that back 1 frame. Just like that. So now, let's take a look at all 3 of our pieces here, and I'm going to go ahead and just open up under animation editors, the tracks editor. Just kind of get that in here so I can have all 3 open at the same time. All right. And let's set all these up. So 1, 2, and 3. I'll go ahead and delay 3 quite a bit. Okay, I'll slow down 1. All right, so let's play this back. Perfect. Okay, and unfortunately I don't have enough frames here, so let me give myself another extra frames so we can actually see the rest of the animation. Now, what I'd like to do is blend her turning, this third person, turning her head and kind of watching the other two, like, what do I do now? So we'll just select her joint, and I need to set a couple of keyframes with nothing happening. So I'll say Shift E, and I'll go to frame 40, Shift E. Okay, so nothing, no change. And in between here, I'll go ahead and I'll rotate her head so she's kind of looking at the other two characters like, what do I do now? Okay, like that. Shift E. So she's clearly checking them out, like, what do I do? And watch what happens when I animate this and hit play. She looks, and then she snaps, and that's not good. Okay. Well, the reason she's snapping is because a lot of this stuff is layered. Okay. So let's create that animation that I have here, this keyframes that I have, into a clip. So we'll just say create clip. There it is. I'll rename this head turn. Okay. And now we got kind of the best of everything. We can play this back. And you can see that's kind of fast, so maybe let's pull this down on its own track. Speed it up. We can overlap it. It looks. Oh, better bow. And maybe we want, let's get all 3 of them loaded up here. Maybe we want female 2 to be a little bit quicker on the return. So let's see what we got. Very nice. And that's how we took one character animation, turned out 3 characters, different sizes, different playbacks, different clips, all tied together using the tracks editor. The walk cycle that we've been using in our kit has shown you how to pretty much extract data. What about this walk cycle where she's on a treadmill? What if we want to walk her forward? What's the technique used to do that? Well, I've got lesson 14. The title of it is Walking the Walk. And what I want to show you is if we have 200 frames in our animation and she walks once, let's go ahead and loop this animation. Okay, I'll go ahead and open up the tracks editors. We'll just go to the tracks editor. And she is set up as a character set. So let me just load her as the character. There she is. And I'll just loop this out to past 200 frames, so we have enough to work with. Okay, so here's our animation. Here's our walk cycle. And we need to move her forward. Well, it's not as easy as just taking this global control here and just moving it forward, because what's going to happen, let me show you what that looks like. Okay, I'll hold Shift E, Shift E, and watch what this looks like. Kind of looks like a moonwalk, and that's not very good. So let me undo this and undo one more. There we go. All right. So what can we do? How do we do this? Well, there's a trick involved. And we only really need to do one side, and we can loop it. And it's not going to be perfect because her hips aren't going low enough. Okay? So normally you're going to need to have the hips about that height. Unfortunately, the minute I touch my timeline, she's going to reset to that original position. Okay? So let's talk about what we need to do. Let's take a locator. We'll go up here to Create, Locator. And we'll go ahead and go to Show All so we can see the locator. There it is. And let's go to our side view. And I'm going to put that right about there. Okay, I'm going to go to my front view. Put that right over here in front of her foot. All right, perfect. So this is where the foot is going to land. Now, here's how we do this, okay? We're going to set a keyframe, Control. Actually, let me move this locator back a little bit. So that's going to be, when that foot comes down, it's going to be right there on that locator. Okay, I'll press Shift W, set a keyframe for position, and I'm going to turn on my auto key. Right now, I'm going to go frame by frame. So I'll go to the next frame. You see how this moved back? Well, what I want to do is take the global control and move it forward until her toe is right in front of this locator. All right, next frame. And we're going to keep doing this until we get to about frame 13 where the other foot comes down. And looks like I haven't set any keys here. So let me Shift, there we go. Shift W. Okay, there we go. Next frame. And I'm going to do this for 13 frames. Okay, I'm going to get it just right in front. And it's going to look a little bit cardboardish because of the pelvis needs to go a little bit lower. But you'll get the technique down. Okay, by using this locator, we can ensure that the foot stays planted in that same position until it needs to be lifted off and get transferred to the next foot. Okay, go to the next one. Like this. All right, we're at frame 10. We got 3 more left. We're going to go forward. Okay, and our movement's going to be even less now. There we go. We're starting to get there. And one more. All right, so what does this look like? After all that work, you see how she held? Okay, and we can go in and tweak any of that we want. Now, how do we get this to cycle? Well, it's easy. We just open up our graph editor. Okay, we'll go to Window, Animation Editors, Graph Editor. And here's our graph. And we can tweak any of this. So we'll go back in and mess with these just for a second. Let's go to View Infinity. Okay, you notice there's no looping here. And with this curve selected, which is the global control translate Z is the only one that has information on it. We're going to take that and we're going to say curves, post infinity, cycle with offset. And there we go. We get the curve. All right, I'm just going to move this window out of the way because I'm going to go back and tweak those positions a little bit. But there we go. So let's just go in here and take a look. We'll just scrub this timeline a little bit. So you see that shifting? Well, we could take care of a little bit of that just by making sure that auto key is turned on, and just go in and just make these little minor tweaks. Just like that. I mean, you can just nitpick it all day long, and if anything, we want it to slide a bit forward as we get closer to that planting. Okay, so that's kind of the technique used to plant feet. You don't want to just grab the global control and start yanking it across your screen. You'll be pretty disappointed with the result. All right, let's see what that looks like. Nice. Nice plant. And you can see here our graph kind of got a little bit smoothed out a little bit. A little cleaner. Okay. Very nice. In the next lesson, I'm going to show you how to do some redirection so we can actually turn her, make her turn the corner. Let's turn off the curves. You can get rid of this locator. It was just there for, you could have used a box or whatever. It was just for you to see how this is put together. Now that we have the animation moving forward, let's talk about character redirection or the redirection controls. Now, it really depends on which object is selected on what actually gets redirected. Alright, so let's turn on our curves again, our NURBS curves. And we'll play this back, and we've got this kind of simple walk cycle happening. Let's get some more frames. Alright, so she's walking along. What I'd like to do is around here, I'd like for her to kind of turn in our direction. And what we're going to do for that is a redirect. And it's really easy to set up. Okay, well, so we'll go, let's say about frame 30 where she plants her foot. Okay, we'll select the global control. And we'll go to Character, Redirect, Option Box. Now, I'm going to go ahead and reset this option box, and I'm going to choose the rotation and translation, although I'm only going to use the rotation. So it really depends. If you don't need the translation, don't add it. You can always add one specifically for translation. So I'll just choose rotation only. Okay, we'll hit Redirect. We get this cool little icon right here. Hit 4. And it's really important where this icon is placed. So if I place it way out here, okay, and I try to rotate my character, you notice where it rotates, that actually becomes the pivot point for that selected object. It's kind of a temporary pivot point. Okay, let me undo that. Actually, let me press W and then holding down V, I'll middle click on that bone right there in the foot. Okay, the ball of the foot. And that's going to be my position of redirection. So I'm going to press Shift E to set a keyframe. And now that I have that set, I have my auto key turned on. So all I need to do is move forward in my timeline, okay, to right before she touches the ground. Okay, and I'm going to rotate to my direction. Okay, so let's see what this looks like. Awesome. All right. She comes in, touches, and she's rotated. Now, her foot's twisting a little bit sooner than I would like for it to. So what's great is we can go in and add a specific control just for the foot. So we can add a redirect for the foot. So I'll select the foot control here. We'll go to Character, Redirect. Okay, it adds another one of these little icons, so I'll just press forward. Okay, and I want it essentially in the same spot as this other one, so I'll just hold down V, okay, with my move tool, hold down V, middle click and snap. There we go. And set a keyframe, Shift E. Now, I'm going to set this at 0, okay, and I'm really concerned with Y, the Y channel, and right when it gets to here, I'm going to set it back to 0. Okay, Shift E. Why did I do that? Well, if I didn't set this back here, keyframe at 0, then the foot would cross over. It'd be way over here, acting all weird. So essentially what I want to do is stop this kind of floating behavior happening on this foot. Okay, so I'm going to counter animate them. I'm just going to go into this a few frames and counter animate this foot sticking just a little bit. There we go. And there's still just a little bit of a wiggle. We can kind of tone that back just a bit. Nice. All right. So with the redirects, you can redirect anything. If we had animation on her head and we wanted her head to twist or look or bend down or move, it's just a redirect. It's kind of like an override for that particular pivot point. You can override it and then go back to normal. Very useful tool in your arsenal when you're working with tracks. You're going to face a situation where you have animation on one character with a certain type of skeletal system, and you need to remap that animation onto a character that may have a slightly different skeletal system. Now, I prefer to use retargeting as well as everybody here at Digital Tutors, but character remapping has its advantages, and I want you to be aware of how to do it, just so if you're ever asked to do it, you know how to approach the situation. All right, let's take a look at our animation here. This is lesson 16, remapping, and it's just a real simple animation of this very low-res character. She's kind of like at a fashion show, poses, and then heads back. Okay, so she's got 2 arms, and it's kind of a standard setup. We want to apply that animation to this character that has 4 arms. Now, this 4-armed character has nothing special to her. We literally didn't model this accurately. We just ripped off her arms from up above and stitched them into the side of her body. So really just to prove a point that how the process would be to do this. All right, first things first, let's create character sets out of both of these skeletal systems. So we'll take the first character. We'll go to Character, Create Character Set, option box. Okay, and I'm going to reset everything. This is going to be female, 2 arms, and I'm going to choose Hierarchy below selected node. Now, by doing this, it's going to look at every bone in the skeletal system. So I'll just say Create Character Set, and that saves me from having to do the Select Hierarchy trick that I showed you earlier. All right, we're going to do the same thing for this character. Create character set, except this is going to be called 4 arms. Okay, create character set. All right, let's remap the data from here to here. And the way it works is we just select the female 2 arms character set. We'll go to Character Remapper, and you get this huge window. So let me just move it over for a second. Load source over here, which is the 2 arms. The 4 arms is going to be the target, so we'll go ahead and load that. And we have a number of different ways of connecting one joint to another joint. And by clicking them, that's really essentially a manual connection, and we don't want to do that yet. We can go to Edit, and there's some automated ones here. We can map it based on order, which wouldn't be a good idea because hip would get connected into the elbow, so that's not going to work. We could base it off of node names if you were very, very careful about your naming structure. The only issue would be if you're using something like Cyflex or a certain plugin that requires unique node names. That could be an issue. I'm going to recommend based on hierarchy. We have a similar hierarchical structure. We can just reuse it. So I'll choose that, and you'll notice that it connected the character with 2 arms, its hip, to the character with 4 arms, hip, and all the way down the line. However, it didn't know what to do with these characters or these joints. So let's go ahead and hit close. Okay, and I'm going to need to make a sub-character set out of the shoulder, the wrist, the shoulder, elbow, and wrist. Shoulder, elbow, and wrist. Okay, we're going to take those items, go to Character, Create Character Subset. We'll call this lower arm. Here we go. Create sub-character set. And now let's remap those. So we'll say character remapper here, or the mapper. And the female with 2 arms is the source. The lower arms is the target. And let's connect this up. Let me open this window so we can actually read where the joints are. We're going to connect the left shoulder to the left shoulder, hit map. The left elbow to left elbow, map. Wrist to wrist. Okay, and we're going to do the same thing on the right side. So there's the right shoulder, the elbow, and the wrist. Okay, close. All right, so now that we've done this, let's take a look at our character sets inside of Tracks. Okay, I'll open up the Tracks window, and I'll add the selected characters. There they are. And one of the things I need to do is rip off the animation from the female. So we'll say Create Clip. And it says there are too many characters selected. Okay. Create Clip. There it is. And all I need to do is copy it and paste it on my forearms. Okay, so if I play this back, you see she walks. That's awesome. And I'll also right click and paste clip on the lower arms. Okay, set that up. And now you'll see that the second set of arms will move, and we do have some clipping, so I mean you're going to have to do some animation on that. But we could delay this a little bit. So it kind of plays back like that. And you can see by doing this type of a setup, you can get a lot of results really quickly. Of course, you do have clipping, and this animation doesn't have a clavicle in that system, so we could add a clavicle. Obviously, we would want to make sure there is no clipping and that they are sequenced, but that wouldn't be hard to do. You would just offset that enough. Let me open up our tracks editor here. We would just offset this. So when maybe not that much. There we go. Something cool like that. Obviously a little too much, but you get the idea. That was just a little exercise I wanted to show you on remapping. In this final lesson of the Tracks kit, I want to talk to you about possibly using tracks for a non-character related situation. A great situation to use tracks in is for particle animation. So let's, from our dynamic shelf here, I'm just going to create an emitter, and I'll hit play. And let me give myself 1,000 frames. Not quite 100, about 1,000. There we go. And we see we've got some particles that are shooting out of this emitter. Now, that's all cool and dandy, and we can use the presets, right? So we do have a preset available where we can take our particle emitter and load up a certain type of presetted look. But it doesn't really cover animation. That's where I think the tracks editor can be so useful. Okay, so I'll select my emitter. And the way I like to set up my character set, so I just like to go to Character, Create Character Set. Okay, Particle System is what I'm going to call it. And I'm going to choose All Keyable. So I'll create the character set. And you notice it added everything in here. That's okay. I just want to now remove the Translate, Rotate, and Scale, and Visibility particle type. I want to get rid of all those. So I just select all those, choose Character, Remove from Character Set. There you go. Now those become active and just fine. So now let's set some keyframes up. So we'll start off with no animation for 50 frames. Okay, let me go ahead and select my particle system node here, and or I could also select the emitter. It doesn't matter either way. Okay, so I'll set my rate to 0. My speed is 0. And yeah, that's good. We'll leave it at that for now. Okay, and I'm just going to hit S on my keyboard. By doing that, I have set a keyframe for all of the attributes inside of the particle system character set. So let's rewind, play. Okay, for 50 frames, nothing happens. Okay, so what we'll do is we'll go just a few frames past 50, maybe like 54. And we'll set the rate to 500. We'll set the speed to 5. Okay, and we'll hit S. Oops. To set a key. And then I'll go one more frame, and I'll set those back all down to 0. Okay, so essentially what we're going to do is we're going to burst 500 frames, or 500 particles real quick, burst them like this. And then that's it. All right, let me make these particles a little bit easier to see. I'm just going to go to my particle shape, and let me come down here and choose a larger size, just so they're a little bit easier to see. All right, so that's cool. What can I do with that? Well, let's open up our tracks editor. Okay. We'll go ahead and add our selected characters, which I thought we had it selected. There it is. Okay, there's our particle system. We'll go ahead and create a clip from our basic animation that we've got. Okay, There's our 5-frame animation. Let's just move that over. So let's say we can get this thing to start up, around frame 10. Okay, so let's rewind and play this back. Here comes our particles. There they are. So what can we do with this? Why would we want to go through all these steps? Well, we can do things like this. We can select that guy. We can go to Edit, Duplicate. Okay, I'm going to turn off Duplicate Input Connections. Actually, no, we do want to do that. And we want to go ahead and add it to the tracks editor and the visor. So we'll go ahead and duplicate the clip. Let's find out where our playhead is. There it is, way back there. Okay. Go ahead and duplicate it again. Now let's see what we have. Now we got 3 things bursting. Here comes another burst, and here comes another burst. So if we wanted to, we could spread these out, stretch them out, clip them, all kinds of really cool effects. Here comes another burst and another burst. So why would I do all that? Why would I go through and set up? I mean, I could have this connected into gravities and all kinds of items in my character set. Well, it comes down for things like this. Let me create a new, let me go to Dynamics. I'll create a new particle emitter. There it is. Move it over. Okay, create a character set out of it. So let me jump back over. All right, and again, I'm going to remove these items. So we'll just highlight those and choose Remove from Character Set. All right, perfect. Now all I need to do is to add this to my select characters. There's my new particle system. And I can do one of 2 things. I can copy and paste like I did earlier. Okay, so just have to go to Edit, Copy, come down to the Particle System 1, right-click, Paste. It doesn't have the exact same attributes, so that's fine. We'll just say yes. It's going to try to guesstimate where they should go. And now you'll see I have 2 particle bursts. Obviously, I haven't reset those, but I got a similar burst. I can merge that clip. I can reuse them. More importantly, I can select these, File, Export, Export Clip, save it into my clip folder, Burst, and I can go in and build a huge library of them, right? So I don't necessarily have to use or copy and paste. If I had a brand new particle system, okay, all I need to do is right-click, import to character, bring in the burst. There it is, just like that. So here we'll make a bigger burst. Let me zoom in a little bit. So we'll fire one off, and then we'll fire the other one. So here this one goes, and then this one goes. It's a very, very unusual way of using tracks, but I think it makes complete sense because it allows us to store pre-built animations, fireworks animations, or however you want to build these, and reuse them, but then adjust their timing, adjust their time warp. All of these are stored away in the visor, so you have access to all of these at any time, and you could build yourself a large library. Sit down for a couple days, build up a whole bunch of different particle simulations, and then store them off as clips, and you can dump them into your scenes wherever you need them. They're going to be stored right in the character clips. Now, if you don't want to, and unfortunately I called these all walk, I need to redo those to like particle burst. You could also, if you wanted to, save these out as poses, and then you could switch or blend between one pose and another. Not that much different than using a preset and keying everything, changing the preset, keying. This is, a different way of doing it, but you can then include other nodes within your character set, which is kind of nice. Hopefully that'll give you some ideas. We're going to also, before this kit is over, talk to you about how you can get some free motion capture and plug that into your characters to use within your own projects. During these last few lessons, I want to take some time to show you where you can go to get some free stock motion capture files and how to convert those motion capture files from the UMF format into a Maya format. Now, I want to thank our friends over at Emotech for allowing us to share the stock moves with you, as well as to show you where you can go to get your own stock moves. They're completely free for non-commercial use, so as long as you're learning. And if you want to use them for commercial use, they are very, very cheap. So you might want to look at them for some motion capture. All right, first of all, let's jump out to their website. It's www.e-motek.com/entertainment/stock moves and then /convert.html. Okay, we'll head to that website. And here you're going to need to download a stock moves converter. And we want the Maya version, so we will go ahead and hit download. It'll give us an option to save this file, so I'll just go ahead and open it. And this is the file we are looking for, the umfconvert.exe file. Okay, and I've got that opened already or saved, so I'll just show you what that looks like. Here's what it looks like. And you can take a file and convert it into a .ma file format. So that'll be a Maya scene file. So I'll show you how to do that here in just a second. Now let's go ahead and get some stock moves. I'll click on stock moves. And you're going to have to register and log in. Registration is free, so that's not a problem at all. Okay, we were using a Maya system. Once you're logged in, like I'm already logged in, but once you've logged in, you can get into the system here. And the way you do that is you pick a category. So let's say a run. Okay, and I want to connect to the head. And now we have a whole bunch of runs that we can look at. Now, if you're not for sure what it looks like, hit the view button, and it will actually show you a little preview. Okay, so I like that one. We'll add that to the cart. And I'm going to choose one in waiting. And we'll choose head. Actually, let's choose chest, see what we got. That's not very exciting. So you can go through and pick exactly what you're looking for. Let's see, hips. That's kind of cool. All right, so we'll just add that. It says now we have 2 items for free. We'll choose get for free. You review your information, choose get for free, and it's going to process all of your files for you, and you hit get it, and it takes you to a directory on their website that has all of your files ready to go for you. All you now need to do is click the file that you wanted, hit save, save it, and then you just need to convert that file. So let's load up that file. Okay, we'll go with that first run sequence. You can actually view it here, which is kind of cool. And for my character, the shoulders are going to be off, so that's something that we're going to have to take a look at. You can see here the shoulders aren't completely squared up. So our character will look the same way, but you can get things that are tweaked. All right, all you have to do is hit convert, and oops, I need to give it a name. Let me give it a name. Run. And I do need to include the calibration frame or the T-pose, okay, also known as the T-pose. All right, we'll convert that. We'll get the second file. Okay, this is kind of the waiting or browsing. Call that waiting, include that, convert. And now if I was to go back to that folder, you'll notice I did have one mistake there, file name without a name, but I have the run and the waiting ready to go, ready to be used inside of Maya. Now in the next lesson, I'll show you how you can bring this data in and start attaching it to a skeletal system. Now that we've got the motion capture converted to a Maya file, let's take a look at how to apply that to our character using retargeting. Alright, I've got lesson 19 stock moves opened up here, and if I open up this or show you this in wireframe, you can see that it's just a simple setup here. We've nothing fancy, just the joints. There's no animation on her. Pretty standard. Okay. Alright, let's open up that UMF folder that we've been storing and working in, and I'm going to take the waiting file and drag and drop that right in. Okay, so there's my character. Now what's great is this character's already got a ton of animation on it, and it goes from the T-pose or the configuration pose and switches into the animation. Now the only thing that we need to be concerned about is the last frame. You notice it kind of gets kind of wacky like this. All right, so let's go ahead, right click, select hierarchy, get all those joints. All right, and I'll just pull in here a little bit so it's a little bit easier to see. We're going to take that last frame, right click and choose delete. So then it just hangs out there. Okay, perfect. All right, what I want to do is take this skeleton and copy and paste the run onto it as well. All right, so I'll go ahead, open up that UMF folder again, grab my run, drag and drop it. And now if I play this back, I have two things going on here. I've got my run skeletal system, okay, and it has the same kind of thing. At the very end of its cycle, it kind of has this funky position. So we'll go ahead, right click, select hierarchy, and we're going to take off that last frame. Okay, so there's our run cycle. So how do we combine the two? Well, it's really, really easy. We just double click the timeline, right click and choose copy. Okay, and I can actually take that running skeleton and throw it away now because I've copied the frames. And I'll just select the original skeleton, the waiting animation. Let's say we go to about frame 60 and we'll just right click, paste, paste. And oops, I pasted everything in here except I didn't get all the joints. So let me just right click, select hierarchy, and then paste again. There we go. So it goes from T-pose to waiting around, back to T-pose to running. Okay, so what we want to do is take off this first frame at frame 60 here. We want to get rid of that. Okay, so it goes from waiting right into the run. Perfect. All right, we're happy with that. Now, why did I do that? Well, when I retarget, I'm going to have to name the skeleton, and I don't want to have to go through and name both of them. So I just copy and pasted the animation from one skeleton to another because it has the same joints and the joint names. So it just makes life a little bit easier for us. All right, now how do I get this animation from this little guy connected to the animation on this larger character? We're going to use Maya's retargeting system. Now, to use the retargeting system, we have to go in and label everything. Okay, so I'll go ahead and hide her geometry there, and I'll go ahead and put the joints on the don't touch layer, so those are hidden and out of the way. And let's worry about this little guy first. All right, we'll go up here to skeleton, joint labeling, add retargeting labels, and I'll just tear this off. Okay, we'll pull that off to the side. And I'm also going to go to skeleton, joint relabeling, show all labels. Now when you show all labels, you notice here they all say none. Okay, so we want to work on that. All right, first thing we'll do is let's grab the leg. We're going to say this is the left side, okay, the character's left side, and that is his hip. Okay, this is his knee. So we're just going to go down through the chain. Okay, this right here is the foot, and this is the toe. Find the toe. There we go, toe. All right, we'll go ahead and do this side. And if you want, you can, we'll just say all those are right, and we'll grab the hip. I think if you say it's the leg, it should go through and do the rest of them. Hip, knee, foot, and toe. There we go. All right, this is our root. So we don't have to say center. It assumes that if it's not left or right, then it is the center. Okay, right here, this is the spine. Right here, this is the neck. And that's the head. Okay. Now, these are on the left sides. We'll say left. Okay, get them all done like that. That's going to be the collarbone. So let's say collar. The shoulder, we'll just see if we can label this as arm. And it did shoulder, elbow, hand, finger. Okay, and we're not really concerned about the fingers, so that's okay. Let's go ahead and set this to the right side. That's going to be the collarbone. And then this is going to be an arm. So shoulder, elbow, hand and finger. All right, this character is done. We're set with that. Now, a little tip for you. Because you're retargeting or relabeling, let me throw this away. We don't need that right now. We're going to be relabeling this Emotek character all the time. You can actually just go in and select all of these. Let me pull this all the way up to right there. Actually, right about there. You can take all that, move it up to your shelf, and then you can just hit a button. So you might want to record your movements as you're going. That way you can reuse this all the time. You don't have to keep redoing this. All right, let's go ahead and bring up our bigger skeleton. I'm going to hide this skeleton just for a second. Okay, let's work on this. This side is the left side, and that is the left leg. So hip, knee, foot, toe, and toe. Okay, so this may give us a little bit of an issue later on because this has 2 toes in here now, and we may have to see what that gives us, okay? Because it's going to be a little bit different from our other character. That's going to be the right side, and that is going to be the leg, so I'll do that. This is the root. Let's find that, root. Okay, and this is kind of weird because we have a hip here and a hip here, but this is also a hip. Let's try to just do a spine, and we'll go from there, see what happens, okay? So this is a spine, this is a spine, this is a spine. And I just shift selected all those. Okay, this is going to be the left side, and that's the collar. And I'm going to do these individually, just click and drag them. Okay, that's going to be the elbow. Now, I have a forearm twist in this rig, but I'm not going to be concerned with it. Okay, I'm not worried about it. That's going to be the hand. So let's label the hand. And I'm not going to worry about these fingers. Okay, that joint right there is also a spine. Okay, the next one is the neck. This one's the head. So it moves pretty quick once you kind of get the feel for it. That's the right side, collar, shoulder, elbow, and hand. Okay. So now that I've got these done, let me unhide my other character here. And let's just verify. We have foot, toe, toe. We're good here. Let me just double check this one. There's a foot and a toe. So we'll have to see how this is going to play out when we actually retarget these. Okay, let's go ahead and set now our neutral poses. So this little character, we'll select the root. That's a good neutral pose. It's already in that position. So we'll just go to skeleton, retargeting, set neutral pose. You'll notice that it will add a neutral pose node. Now on this character, let's go ahead and go to bind pose. So we'll go to skin, go to bind pose. Okay, looks good. And we'll go to skeleton, retargeting, set neutral pose. That's pretty much telling the 2 characters that these are both in a neutral pose. They're a good way to start, that they're both pretty much aligned in the directions that we want them to be. Alright, all we now need to do is select the Emotek skeleton, shift select our skeleton, and we'll go to skeleton, retargeting, retarget skeleton. We'll go to the option box and just double check things. Okay, we're going to reset all of the settings, and we'll just retarget. Okay, so now as you can see, when I scrub this, let me turn off my labeling so it's a little bit easier to see. Joint labeling, hide all labels. Okay, you can see our large skeleton is acting just like the small skeleton, and we're starting to get some decent results. Now, there is some issues with the hands. Okay, because the Emotek skeleton, the hands orientation were facing down, and ours were facing out, and that's why we have this. And we're going to fix that once we turn it into a track. Let's turn our geometry on. And there's a little bit of tweaking we want to do with the foot. There we go. And we can also tweak some stuff on the head. We can just add another layer of animation. another clip to it. But you can see how easy it was to just retarget that mocap data onto our particular character here. Alright, so we're going to continue with this file in the next lesson, and I'll teach you how to tweak some of this out and clean it up. Alright, now that we've got the animation connected to our larger skeleton, let's go ahead and turn her into a character set and then some clips so we can rearrange and loop. Alright, what we want to do next is take our skeleton here, and let's create a character set. And I'm going to make sure that the hierarchy below selected node is selected, female, and we'll create character set. Now, why didn't we just create a character set from this skeleton and remap or do something like that? Well, watch what happens when I create a character set out of this skeleton. All the rotational data on the skeleton say it's set to 0, and that's not good. So that's why we had to do it in this process. Alright, let's open up the tracks editor. And let's load our selected character. There's our female clip. And let's go ahead and create a clip out of this animation. There it is. Okay, so what we want to do is, first, we want to trim off the first frame. So I'll set this to 2 and move that over 1. Okay, so now we don't really have a T-pose. But we have a lot of this empty data here. You can see my clip has information, but my character's not doing anything. Well, what we want to do is go in and find out where does the idle stop. Okay, and it's kind of hard to tell where the idle stops. So let's open up this guy's graph editor. Okay, and we can just type in graph editor in our command line here to open up the graph editor for that character. Okay, we'll frame all these curves. And let's see, the magic number is going to be around frame 49. So since I have this on frame 49, I can just go to my clip. Oops, go back there, 49. Right click and choose split. And now that splits everything from my walk cycle off. So here's my initial animation. Okay, and then this gets my walk cycle prepared. Alright, let's take a look at our skeleton again. When does our walk cycle start? Let's see. It looks like it starts at frame 60. So again, I will trim this clip, or split, and I can throw away this part, because I don't need that. Okay, and I need to find out when my animation ends, and it looks like about frame 80. So I'll just right click and choose trim after, and that gets rid of that information. Okay, so I've got my idle pose and then my run. Okay, very good. Well, let's talk about what we can do here, or what we need to do. One issue that we're going to have is if I open up my visor and take a look at my source clips, both of these are still one source clip, and it's still going to have that information tucked away in there. So this little idle clip still has the walk cycle. If I drag it out, you'll see it. Well, what we want to do is isolate that. So let's take this clip and let's merge it. Okay, so we'll go to Edit, Merge. Now that makes a brand new clip, so let's rename this. This will be the idle source. Okay, and I'll call this here idle clip. All right, now here's the thing. This first clip that we created, if I delete that, you'll notice that the idle clip stays because I merged it into a brand new clip, but my walk disappeared because it was still connected to that. Let me undo. So let's go ahead and create a merged clip out of it. Now, when you merge a clip like this, this is also called destructive keying, where the keyframes are actually ripped off before and after, and this is a new clip that's a source. So you have to keep that in mind. Walk source. Okay, and we may need to edit the keyframes of this guy. Let me just rename this to walk clip. Okay, and I'll just put that up. All right, nice. let's go ahead and loop this out to about 200 frames. Let's rewind and play this. Okay, and look what happened. Our character got dropped all the way down here, and our loop still looks a little bit funny. So what I'd recommend we do is we take this to 79, we trim one of the frames off. There's still a little bit, and we could tweak that. We can make sure that the first frame and the last frame are the same, and then trim one back, but that's another lesson. I want to talk to you more about how we get this shifting dealt with. So we don't need the Emotech skeleton anymore. I'll just go ahead and hide that little guy. Okay, Control H. And let's worry about the problems that we have that we're facing here. All right, so we've got this idle, and then we have this drop down. So a trick that we can do is grab our root or our character set here. Okay, let me just select it. And we're just going to set some keyframes in this position up here. Okay, so let's just frame this up. And let's set a couple keyframes. So with our female selected, we'll hit Shift W, Shift E. Actually, let me see if I can just grab these guys here. There we go. Shift W, Shift E, middle click. Oh, 5, 10 frames, it doesn't matter. Shift W, Shift E. So what I've done is I've set some keyframes right here, you can tell, on the translation and rotation. Okay, and all I'm going to do now is drop that clip in, okay, by going to Create Clip. And you see where it put it way up here. That's okay. We're going to place it on its own track right here. And I'm going to stretch this out. There we go. And let's play this back. Okay. See how it gets kind of funky like this? Actually, I only needed to put a translation keyframe. I didn't need to put a rotation. So let's open up the attribute editor, and I'm going to set the rotates to relative and the translates to absolute. There we go. All right. So we still probably want to do a little bit of an offset, but that's pretty good. Okay. Now the reason that it ran out is because this doesn't go all the way to the end. So let's just verify it goes all the way to the end. Nice. All right, let's worry about this. Let's do this head here. This head's acting really weird. So let's also make a clip out of the head. Okay. So let's just go into wireframe here. Grab our rotation. Rotate that neck forward a little bit, like that. Shift E for a keyframe. Middle click your timeline, Shift E. That way the scene doesn't update. Okay. And now we're going to create a clip out of that. Stretch it out. Let me get in here a little bit tighter. Perfect. And there we go. So you would do the same type of trick with any other offset. Like if we look at the arms are really goofy looking. Okay, so the arms, there's a lot of offset happening. We need to have some offset take place. So let's go in and add a little bit of that offset. Let's take our hands. Okay, I'll go ahead and rotate them. Rotate the wrist. Like that. Give me a little bit on the elbow. Okay, and a little bit on the shoulder. Just like that. And remember, you're going to need to select the hand, shift select, just grab my Q button there, grab all of these pieces, and Shift E to set a keyframe. Now, if you get this type of movement, that's okay. All right. So what's happening is it's trying to add all this together. We'll just middle click, Shift E. Let's turn that into a clip. Okay, and let me just double check this clip setting here. Let me see what happens if we set all of them to relative. There we go. Okay, and we'll just go ahead, stretch this out so it matches. And that's not really good. That's not what we're looking for. Let's try to troubleshoot what's happening here because it's going into her body. Let me mute this real quick. Okay, let me pop this clip off. Let's just double check this again. Let me pull her into bind pose. Okay, we'll go to skin, go to bind pose. And let's set the offset here. So let me just grab her forearm. We'll work with this, just verify that this does work. Okay, we'll grab her hand. Okay, we're just going to twist her down. And what's happening is that the Emotech skeleton, its hands were pointed down, and our character's hands were pointed out, facing us. So therein lies the discrepancy. Okay, we'll go ahead and take these two joints, Shift E, middle click the timeline, Shift E, create a clip. Okay, and let me go ahead and place that clip in the channel 2 here, and we'll stretch it out. There we go. Very nice. So you can see the difference here where we have one character's hand is facing this way, and our character is now facing down. So we can tweak that a little bit, right? We can keep adding to this, and an easy way to make these tweaks is just to graph the curve, frame it, and now you can make sure you do it as a pair, but you can go in and adjust this animation. So with our move tool, we can now move these up. Okay, and you can see here what's happening. Okay, so as I rotate that forearm, okay, we'll grab these. Okay, we can grab the wrist. And this rotate Z. So you get the idea. You can quickly go in and actually let me see. Rotate X is really what I want to mess with. Nice. And just by making some tweaks there, it then gets updated. So you get the idea of how easy it is to make these adjustments like this. There we go. That looks good. And now for our clip, we're set. Right? We have no penetration. We're very close to the body, but no penetration like we have here. And that's what I would call an offset. So let's rename this offset. Hand offset. This is the height, head offset. Okay, and this is the height offset. And that's how you would go through and set a little bit of tweaking on your animation. Like we might want to tweak her foot a little bit and plant that down. All these can be done with different offset methods. Now once you're happy with these, right, we can just take these two and merge them down. So we'll just go, something to be aware of when your attribute editor is open, it has to load all of those channels. So just kind of be aware of that. We'll just say merge. And now that clip is merged down into one clip. We've got a nice tight body line here without crossing over. Run. Okay, and you can see the difference. The hand is pointed up, the hand is pointed in. And you can have a lot of fun with it. So hopefully you can take some of those stock moves, use them in your own animations for yourself. As long as they're non-commercial, they're really cool about working with you. And again, I just want to thank our friends over at Emotech for sharing their stock move library with all of you. In this final lesson of the Nonlinear Animation with Tracks training kit, I want to show you how to insert keys into an existing clip in your Tracks editor. Now this type of animation is called destructive animation because up to this point we've never really touched or messed with the curves themselves that made up the clip. Now we're actually going to get into there and tweak that curve set and actually lay keys into the clip so it does become destructive. All right, I've got lesson 21 opened up here, and I'm going to go ahead and load up the character's face character set. Okay, so that way when I hit S, I can keyframe all of the attributes for the face. All right, so right here at this position, I'm going to go ahead and set a keyframe. Let me just set it back to 0. I'll set a keyframe for this character at 0, so I'll just hit S. Okay, and I'm going to go to, let me just reduce my frames here to about 24 frames, just so it's a little bit easier to see. And I'm going to go to the end of 24, and I'm going to make some changes to his rig here. Okay, I'm going to open the mouth. I'll raise the eyebrows just a bit, and raise the upper lip a little bit, just like that. Hit S. Okay, so here's my clip. I go from here to here, and let's create a clip. Okay, perfect. And I'm going to rename this. Open mouth. Okay, pretty standard stuff, no big deal. Okay, I've just got 2 keys and an animation. Well, what if I want around frame 18, I want to insert a smile, but I don't want to add another clip? Well, that's what the key into clip function allows you to do. This is very destructive. Let me go ahead and show you the graph editor. Okay, and I'll frame this. And as you can see here, we do have keys set up. Okay. But we only have 2, this one and this one. So when I do this, frame 18, it should insert new keys. So I'm going to just move this up and out of the way so you can keep an eye on this. All right, let's go ahead and insert that smile. Something like that. And I don't set a key or anything. I just go up to my clip and, oops, let me put that smile in. Right click and choose Key into Clip. And you'll notice that it added a new set of keyframes wherever it needed to for this piece of animation. So now I actually get a smile and it goes back to the original keyframe that I set. Now this has been altered in this curve editor, so this clip has been updated with a new bit of information, and we could tweak that information. We could do kind of, anything that we want with it. And so that's how you can add to your clip. Hopefully you've had a chance to, through this training kit, get a better understanding of how the Tracks editor works, how non-destructive and non-linear animation works, as well as how you can use things like this to destroy clips, to actually add functionality to them, or to use motion capture files within Tracks. This training kit is a great fundamental start to working with nonlinear animation, and I want to thank Sundar Iyer for all of the research that he's done on this kit. He's our lead research and developer here at Digital Tutors and has just worked a great deal with the whole track system in nonlinear, and also Delano for doing the animation on these characters. Thank you guys very much, and we'll see you in the next training kit.